Story number 1, checkout time. I was processing the evening check-ins when I realized the silver sedan from room 214 was still in the parking lot. The man had dropped his key in the return slot at 2 in the afternoon, nodded politely, and walked out without any luggage. I remembered him because he was the quiet type. Paid cash, didn't ask questions, kept his eyes down. The kind of guest you forget about immediately. By 5 o'clock, I was thinking about it more than I should have been. His car was still there, parked directly in front of his former room, engine cold to the touch when I'd walked past it earlier. I assumed he was waiting for a ride, or maybe he'd gone to the truck stop next door to grab food or make a phone call. People did that sometimes. It wasn't unusual. I told myself it wasn't unusual. Around 5:30, I was filing paperwork and checking in a family of 4 when I noticed it. A smell, faint but distinct, drifting down the back stairwell. Stale cigarette smoke. The kind that clings to fabric and settles into corners. The second floor had been empty since morning housekeeping finished their rounds. We didn't have any smokers up there. We didn't have anyone up there. I stopped what I was doing. Listened. The smell was still there, and it was coming from the stairwell, not from anywhere else in the lobby. I excused myself and walked to the back office, closing the door quietly behind me. My hands felt strange as I pulled up the security camera feed on the computer. I rewound the timestamp to 30 minutes ago. There he was, the man from 214. He was slipping through the side fire exit, the one that's supposed to be alarmed, though the alarm had been broken since March. With no bag, no jacket, just moving quickly. His pace was different now, purposeful. He took the back stairs 2 at a time, disappearing from the camera's view as he reached the second floor. I sat there for a moment, staring at the frozen frame. The rational part of my brain offered explanations. He'd forgotten something in his room. He was meeting someone. He'd paid for the room through the night and changed his mind about leaving. But that didn't match what I'd seen. He'd checked out. He'd returned the key. And he'd come back through the fire exit instead of the front door, which made no sense unless he didn't want to be seen coming back in. I locked the office door and picked up the radio. Carlos was in the maintenance shed out back. "Carlos, it's Sarah. I need you to come inside. Second floor. Someone's up there who shouldn't be." And there was a pause. Then, "You sure?" "I'm sure." "Bring the master key." He was there in 3 minutes, still holding his thermos of coffee. I didn't explain everything. I just told him someone had entered through the fire exit, and we needed to check the rooms before I called the police. He didn't ask questions. Carlos had worked here long enough to know that protocol mattered. We moved through the second floor methodically, starting at the far end. Room 201 was empty. 203 was empty. 205, 207, 209, all empty, all undisturbed. The hallway was quiet except for the sound of our footsteps and the occasional hum of the ice machine. My heart was doing something strange in my chest, a kind of rapid, uneven rhythm that made it hard to breathe normally. When we reached 214, I noticed the bathroom window was open. Cold air was pouring in, and the curtains were moving slightly. The room itself looked untouched. The bed was made, the desk was clear, but that open window felt wrong. It felt like an exit. Carlos kneeled down and looked under the bed frame. He didn't say anything at first. He just reached in and pulled out a black duffel bag, the kind you'd buy at a sporting goods store, heavy, worn. He unzipped it slowly, and I watched his face change. Inside was coiled yellow rope, the kind you'd find at any hardware store. A roll of duct tape, A box cutter still in its packaging, the plastic wrapper unopened. Everything was arranged neatly, deliberately. Everything was ready. I stepped into the hallway. That's when I saw them. Wet footprints leading from the bathroom toward the back stairwell, too fresh to have dried, still glistening slightly under the fluorescent lights. They went to the fire exit door at the end of the hall, which was propped open with a folded newspaper, just enough to keep it from locking behind him. I didn't call the police immediately. I know that sounds wrong, but my mind wasn't working right. I was trying to process what I was looking at, trying to fit it into some framework that made sense. The footprints were still wet. That meant he'd left recently. Very recently, maybe 10 minutes ago, maybe less. Carlos came out of the room holding the duffel bag at arm's length, like it might contaminate him. "We're calling the police," he said. It wasn't a question. I nodded and walked downstairs on shaking legs. The lobby felt different now. Too bright, too exposed. I could see the parking lot through the front windows. The silver sedan was still there. I could see the truck stop across the street. The gas pumps, the convenience store attached to it. He could be anywhere. He could be watching. When I called 911, my voice sounded like it belonged to someone else. I gave them the information. I told them what we'd found. The dispatcher said to lock the doors and wait for officers to arrive. I did that. I locked the front entrance and the back entrance. I locked the office. I stood behind the front desk with Carlos, and we waited. The police arrived in 8 minutes. They took the duffel bag. They took statements. They searched the property, the truck stop, the surrounding area. They never found him. They ran his information from the registration. The name was fake. The address was fake. The credit card had been stolen from someone in Tulsa 3 weeks earlier. They told me I did the right thing. They told me I was lucky. They didn't explain what he was planning to do, but I understood. The rope, the duct tape, the box cutter, the open window, the wet footprints leading away from the room. I finished my shift at 11 that night. The police were still here, still searching. I drove home in silence, checking my mirrors constantly, watching for headlights that stayed too close for too long. When I got home, I locked every door and window. I sat in my living room with all the lights on. I haven't been back to work. I called in sick for the next 3 days, and then I quit. I told the manager I couldn't do it anymore. He didn't push back. Sometimes I think about that silver sedan, still parked in the lot. I think about the wet footprints. I think about how close it all came to being something else entirely. The police never caught him. They never found the car. As far as I know, he's still out there somewhere, and I'm still checking my mirrors, still locking my doors, still listening for sounds that don't belong. Story number 2, Exhibit Hall. I've been working security at the Ashworth Museum for 6 years now. It's a small place, natural history, mostly. Dinosaur bones, mineral displays, that kind of thing. The kind of job where you walk the same hallways every shift, and after a while, you stop really seeing them. You just move through them. Sunday nights are my usual rotation, and I close the building at 9 p.m. That Sunday in November was like any other. I'd made my announcements at 8:55, the standard spiel about the museum closing in 5 minutes. A few people gathered near the front desk, heading toward the exit. I was standing by the information kiosk when I noticed the man. Thin guy, maybe mid-30s, wearing a dark jacket that looked too heavy for the weather. He was crouched down near the geology wing entrance, bent over his shoe like he was tying it. His hands were working at the laces, But something about the way he was doing it felt deliberate, like he was taking his time. I figured he'd just lost track of time. Happens all the time. People get absorbed in the exhibits and don't notice the announcements. I walked over and told him we were closing, kept my tone friendly. He looked up at me, nodded, and stood up. He said he was sorry, that he'd lost track of time. His voice was quiet. He started walking toward the exit, but then he turned and walked toward the restrooms instead. I assumed he needed to use the bathroom before leaving. That made sense. I didn't think about it again. By 9:15, the building was empty except for me. I did my final sweep like I always do. Check the restrooms first. I opened both doors, looked in the stalls, made sure no one was in there. The men's room was empty. The women's room was empty. I figured he'd already left through the front entrance while I was doing other things. The building has 2 exits, and I don't watch them constantly during closing. I started my routine walk through of the exhibit halls. The main floor is mostly open space with marble tiles, and the exhibits are arranged in a loop. I lock the display cases and check the gallery doors as I go. The geology wing, the paleontology section, the mineral hall. It's quiet at night. Just me and the hum of the security system. I was walking down the main hallway toward the back galleries when I heard footsteps. They were behind me, echoing on the marble. I stopped walking. The footsteps stopped too. I told myself it was the building settling. Old buildings make noise. Pipes expand and contract. But the footsteps had sounded like shoes on tile. Real weight, real rhythm. I started walking again. The footsteps resumed immediately, matching my pace exactly. Same cadence. Same distance behind me. I stopped again. Silence. My heart was starting to move faster. I turned around. The hallway behind me was empty. The lights from the main entrance didn't reach back here, and the gallery lights were off. Just the emergency lighting casting everything in a dim, sickly green. I could see the entire hallway. No one was there. I told myself I was being stupid. Maybe it was the heating system. Maybe it was an echo of my own footsteps bouncing off the walls in a way I wasn't used to noticing. I'd walked these halls 1,000 times. There was no reason to be afraid. I kept moving. I had to finish my sweep. I had to lock the back galleries. That's when the lights started turning on. The farthest gallery, the one at the very back of the building, the mineral exhibition, its lights flickered on, just like that. All of them at once, flooding that distant room with fluorescent brightness. I stopped walking. I watched the gallery, waiting for something to move in that lit space. Nothing did. The lights just stayed on. Then the next gallery lit up. The paleontology section, one room closer to me. Then the next one. One by one, the galleries were illuminating from the back of the building toward where I was standing. Like someone was walking through them, turning on lights as they went. Except I wasn't seeing anyone move. Just lights coming on in sequence, getting closer. I didn't think. I just moved. I turned and walked fast toward the security office. My pace was quick, but I wasn't running. I was trying to stay calm, trying to think clearly. The security office is on the main floor, near the front entrance. I could see it from where I was. I walked toward it, and I didn't look behind me. I got inside and locked the steel door. It's a heavy door, the kind that locks from the inside with a deadbolt. I locked it and sat down in front of the monitors. The camera feeds showed the main hallway, the galleries, the exits. I watched them all, cycling through the views. The building was empty. All the cameras showed empty hallways and dark galleries. But the lights in those back galleries were still on. I could see them in the camera feeds, lit rooms with no one in them. I called the police. I told them there was an intruder in the building. I gave them my location and told them I was locked in the security office. They said they were sending someone. It would take about 20 minutes. I sat there and watched the monitors. The lights stayed on in those back galleries. No movement. No one appeared on any of the cameras. I watched for the entire 20 minutes. The building remained empty and still, except for those inexplicable lights. The police arrived at 9:47. I heard them come in through the front entrance, heard them calling out. I unlocked the door and let them in. They searched the building room by room, every gallery, every closet, every corner. They found nothing. No one. The building was completely empty. They turned off the lights in the back galleries and checked the switches. Everything was normal. No signs of tampering. By the time they left, it was past 11 p.m. They told me the building was secure, that it was probably an electrical issue or a timer malfunction. They suggested I file a report with the museum director. They didn't seem concerned. To them, it was nothing. I locked up and went home. The next morning, I came in for my shift. The day staff was already there, setting up for opening. I went to the break room to put my bag in my locker. That's when I saw it. My jacket was draped over the top of my locker. The dark blue one I wear in winter. Except I hadn't worn it that night. I'd worn my work jacket, the one with the museum logo. I'd left my personal jacket at home. I stood there looking at it. No one had an explanation. The day manager checked the security footage from the morning. The building had been empty all night. No one had come in. The jacket had just been there when they arrived. I don't work Sundays anymore. I requested a schedule change, and they gave it to me without asking questions. I still think about that night sometimes. I think about the footsteps that matched my pace. I think about the lights coming on one by one. I think about my jacket hanging on my locker in a building I never went to that night. I never figured out what happened. I've never been able to explain it in a way that made sense, but I know what I heard, I know what I saw, and I know that man in the dark jacket never left the building. Story number 3, Doc Visitor. I got back from the grocery store at 6:30 in the evening. The sun was still up, that pale spring light that makes everything look thin and washed out. I pulled into my driveway and sat in the car for a moment, looking down at the lake through the trees. That's when I saw it. An aluminum boat, tied to my dock. I didn't recognize it. It was maybe 18 feet, a fishing boat, the kind you see at any public launch. No one was in it. The engine looked cold. I sat there for probably 30 seconds just watching it, waiting for someone to move inside the cabin or stand up from the bow, but nothing happened. The boat just sat there, bobbing slightly in the wind. I told myself a fisherman must have stopped. Maybe he walked up to the access road to call someone, or he was lost and went looking for help. People do that sometimes at remote properties. They assume the road is public. I've had it happen before, years ago. It's not unusual. I grabbed the grocery bags and went inside. The back door was unlocked. I'd left it that way when I went out, which I do sometimes when I'm only gone an hour. I set the bags on the kitchen counter and looked out the window at the boat. Still there, still empty. I unpacked slowly, putting things away, and kept glancing out the window. The light was starting to change. It was 6:55. I made tea and sat at the kitchen table with a view of the dock. The boat hadn't moved. No one had come back to it. At 7:15, I decided to walk down and check. I don't know why. Part of me thought maybe someone was hurt or the boat had drifted down and gotten caught on my dock. But as I opened the back door to step outside, I stopped. There were boot prints in the mud. They started at the dock and came up across the lawn toward my house. They were fresh, dark, wet, muddy. I could see the tread pattern clearly. They came right up to my back porch, to the door I was standing in, and they didn't go back. I looked down at the dock. The boat was still there. The prints were there, but there was no one walking back to it, and no one standing anywhere in sight. I went back inside and locked the door. I locked the front door too. I checked the windows on the ground floor, making sure they were all closed, and then I went upstairs to my bedroom, which has a view of the dock and the water. I sat on the edge of my bed and watched. The light was fading fast now. It was that time of evening where you can't tell if it's getting dark because of the hour or because of the weather. The boat was still there, and the water was still, and I was alone in the house with all the doors locked. I told myself the person had probably come up, realized no one was home, and gone back to the boat. Maybe they were sitting in the cabin. Maybe they'd left by now and I just hadn't seen them go. People don't usually stay. They don't usually come back. But the boot prints had stopped at my door. I didn't turn on any lights. I sat in the dark and watched the dock. At 7:45, I could barely see the boat anymore. It was just a shape against the darker water. At 8 o'clock, it was gone to shadow. I stayed in the bedroom. I didn't eat dinner. I drank water from the bathroom tap and stood at the window, watching the lake, which was now completely dark except for the reflection of the moon on the water. Nothing happened for hours. At 2 in the morning, I woke up. I don't remember falling asleep, but I was lying in bed, and something had woken me. I lay still, listening. Then I saw it. A flashlight beam moving slowly across my bedroom window. It came from the direction of the dock, and it was moving methodically from window to window, as if someone was standing on my lawn, sweeping the light across the house. The beam moved across the glass, disappeared, then came back, disappeared, came back. I didn't move. I watched the light sweep across the window again, and my heart was doing something wrong in my chest, something too fast and too hard. The beam stopped. It was pointing directly at my window now, and I realized that whoever was holding it could probably see in. The room was dark, but I was lying in bed. I was visible. I rolled out of bed onto the floor and crawled to the nightstand. I picked up my phone with shaking hands and called 911. The dispatcher was calm. She asked me what was happening. I told her someone was outside my house with a flashlight, and she asked me if they were trying to get in. I said no, they were just looking, sweeping the light across the windows. She said a deputy was 20 minutes out. I barricaded the bedroom door with my dresser, pulling it across the floor. It made a sound, a scraping sound, and the flashlight beam disappeared. I waited for it to come back, but it didn't. I sat on the floor with my back against the dresser and watched the windows. The light didn't come back. Nothing moved. But I didn't move either. I stayed there watching the dark until I heard a vehicle pull into my driveway at 2:45. The deputy found nothing. The boat was gone. The dock was empty. The mud on the lawn had dried in the cool night air, and the prints were too faint to photograph. There were no signs of forced entry, no one hiding in the trees, no evidence of anything, except that I was a woman alone in a remote house who'd seen a light in the dark. The deputy was kind about it. He said someone probably had been out there, that I'd startled them off, that it was good I'd called. He checked the house, looked at the dock, and left at 3:30. I didn't sleep. I sat upstairs and waited for the sun. When the light came, I walked down to the dock. The boat was gone. The water was still. Everything looked normal, the way it always did. Then I walked to the shed. The door was ajar. I opened it slowly. The hook where I kept the spare dock key. The one I hadn't used in 3 years. The one I'd forgotten I even had was empty. The key was gone. I stood in the shed for a long time, looking at that empty hook. The hook was still there. The shed was still there. The lake was still there. Everything was exactly as it should be, except for the one thing that wasn't. I locked the shed door and walked back to the house. I didn't call the sheriff again. What would I tell them? That someone had stolen a key. That they might come back. I know they might come back. I know they have a way